many of you know, he's had a hand in helping create a lot of the recent live events. I am going to turn the floor over to my co-host Harrison Kelly so that he can run down the Q&A question part of the podcast, and there will be time for in-depth discussion toward the end, guys. Again, please be respectful. Don't try to make any rude comments. Not to be tolerated. But Max, the
Hey, how's it going?
floor is yours.
Hey everyone, I'm Max.
Can't go say hello.
Hello.
So enthusiastic. Oh my goodness. Are you getting enough sleep?
It's Saturday. We all have
Yeah.
our morning, coffee, bar, and techno of course. But Karis,
Well,
I'm gonna turn it over to you, man.
okay.
Go
All right, Toth, I
go for it.
appreciate that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all the ships at sea, this is once again the Toth RoR Podcast. And I am your humble narrator, as Toth RoR put out, and I just sort of help moderate so that he doesn't have to do all the talking. But of course, since this is his podcast, he is free to chime in whenever he feels. Today we have with us, as Toth RoR said, the man himself, the legend in his own time, Max Heyman is here. And Max, we do appreciate it. We appreciate you coming in. And also, we have Techno with us. And a little bit later, we might have, is it pronounced Zolio? Is that right?
Zolio.
Zolio? Okay. And guys, I appreciate it. And before we get started with the questions, I do have one thing to say. I was impressed with this sudden appearance of the anniversary special, the Twitch drops, and double renown, all that stuff. And just for whatever it's worth, this past week streaming, I've had a blast, and I think a lot of the other streamers did as well. I mean, it's been, I don't know how else to put it. I mean, I had a lot of fun, and that's what I've always sort of preached that the server should be about, people being able to come here and have fun, and it's been great. So, Max, I just wanted to say thanks for putting that up, and giving all of us who stream or whatever or just play something else to do.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't dare take the credit for it. I did very little with this event in particular. I mean, Techno did a lot. We had Rubius and Ecolime who put a lot of time, and then we have a bunch of artists who spent some time creating all these hats and things, and they put a lot of effort into it. And they did fantastic stuff. And I remember looking through as the stuff was coming in, being like, "Oh, this is good. This is good. I love this hat," and things like that, and wanting every one for myself.
Well,
It was definitely quite a bit, but we're glad you got to enjoy it and everyone else.
well, I mean, it was just fun. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna beat that to death, but it was just a fun event, and the Twitch streamers, the crowds that I had, seemed to really be enjoying what was going on. So, again, just express, if you would, at some point later, guys, just express my gratitude in particular all around because that was a blast. Okay, are you ready for the questions?
Yeah, go for it.
Questions?
Okay, good. All right. I had to have a build up there. All right. Question number one comes from Biff Tannen, and Biff wants to know: is future content on RoR going to be modernized, like we have seen with Land of the Dead and City Sieges? As it's vastly different from how this content worked on Age of Reckoning. I'm not quite sure that I understand exactly what that
So
means, Max, but
So I think this is questions coming from if you remember Land of the Dead on Mythics, it was very much a sort of PvE public quest, sort of open space, and we decided to make it RVR focused. I'm not exactly sure why Mythic decided to make it more PvE than RVR. It's possibly around the time they were still sort of hunting for the PvE player base, because that was obviously a massive push. It was meant to be the WoW killer. So we decided instead of spending loads and loads of time expanding the public quest system to do all of them, which a lot of people are not think we shouldn't focus too much on PvE. We decided to use this opportunity to try out new RVR mechanics and see what we can do. And I don't necessarily think Land of the Dead will strictly be completely different. There is, we are planning to have access not during the expeditions, but also other times. And we are also, looking at doing the Team of the Vulture Lord and the lairs in the future. So there is more planned for Land of the Dead that will bring back some of the stuff Mythic had, but it is different. And in regard to the rest of RVR, and I'm going to take RVR to mean mostly keep sieges and everything below fortresses at this sort of point. Land of the Dead, the new ideas that we were implementing, the new mechanics we were implementing, were all sort of the ideas that we were having for RVR. So it was kind of like a testing ground at first where we could do it, and seeing what would be good to bring into RVR, because RVR is a new beast, and we have to rewrite a load of systems in RVR. So it was kind of like a fresh slate that we could test with. So we've learned a lot, and as we mentioned in the last developer video we did, we are planning to do an RVR rework. So we're going to be taking what we learned from Land of the Dead, seeing what will be good to do in RVR, and we've got lots more. It's still going to be, it's not going to be vastly different. It's still going to be focused around keeps. But we want to modernize it a bit, make it a bit more interesting. I think the landscapes have been fairly the same for 15 years now, and things like that. We want to modernize it, let people see more of the world, and things like that. So we've got a lot of. We don't want to see too much because we've got a lot of really cool ideas that we want to do, and bringing them down into manageable chunks of stuff we can deliver is something that we're trying to work out what we can deliver and how long all this stuff is going to take and things like that. So.
Well, as a follow-up then, you mentioned the other zones that they've looked that way for 15 years, and potentially could one of the modernizations that you're speaking of be opening up some of the PvE areas in the standard zones for more RVR content? Potentially, is that a direction you guys are looking at, or?
Well, yeah. So we've considered that's obviously something that's been considered. People have said they want it. We don't want to completely rip out PvE content because not only is it's deleting bits of the game, which seems a bit, but it's also deleting other people's hard work who worked on the original game. We're trying to see what we can do, how we can make it a more dynamic living world, which I think would have been in the what would have been they would have said in the advertisement for the original game, and so it's something that we consider. We don't want to say too much yet. Like, we kind of logistically worked out if that's something, and there's lots of work that needs to go into things, but at the moment we're looking at mechanics, and then if that's something we want to do, we need to do loads of world editor things. So it's obviously something that's come up, people have asked about, and I mean, who wouldn't think it's cool being able to explore all these different areas? The dwarf train station and fight around that and things like that. It's all cool stuff.
Well, that's why I asked. That was the motivation for my follow-up question. Is that you mentioned Tomb of the Vulture Lord, and one of the great aspects of Tomb of the Vulture Lord as it existed in the past was that it was a dungeon, a PvE dungeon, but it was also an open RVR zone, and that was, I just thought that was always kind of cool.
Are you
That
referring to the sort
particular,
of the invasions that they had where
right,
you're
right,
in PvE and then people can come into your instance and kill you?
yeah, yeah, and you have to fight it out with him. Yeah, I just thought that was I always thought that was a lot of fun. It was all so. Um,
Yeah, I always hear mixed feelings, mixed sort of opinions on that. Um, because when you're fighting a boss and doing good time, and then another realm comes in and starts attacking you, it can be interesting. But at the
right.
moment, like when we come to doing Team of the Vulture Lord, we're going to be focusing on implementing all the mechanics, and then how it fits in, whether we allow invasion is something that we're going to consider at a later time when everything's a bit more wrapped up.
Okay, Techno, you have anything to add along this line?
Yeah, to add on about like modernizing content, I do like we will be modernizing kind of like quests, like improving quest rewards. Because right now, if you do some quests, the rewards are kind of hit and miss, mainly because most of the quests are like 15 or so years old. So I think improving the quest rewards and kind of making open world PvE more enjoyable, it's like you're not really as punished for it, will be good later down the line.
I like that idea. I I said for years I've just sort of been making the offhand comment on my streams and that the monetary rewards for doing some of the quests. You go through a big request and the reward is like 20 silver. It's they're so low as to be inconsequential. And
Hmm.
so yeah, it that I mean that would be just a nice change when you can get around to updating that stuff too. So I'm glad to hear you say that. Okay. The second question on our list, you've already answered as part of the first, so I will skip that one and move on to our next one, which is new armor sets bring a lot of hype and population boom to the server. What is the current stance towards Sovereign being absolute highest tier gear after its release 2 years ago? Will new and higher tier ever come to RoR? Or is the power gap a worry? I guess what they're asking is if you'll ever go up to like the renown rank 100 sets that were part of live.
Well, I think I hear a lot of negative. When they did the Renown Rank 100, it was also when they kind of added because it was I remember it was like you buy like a little microtransaction from the EA store. Got a lot of opinions about it because they also came at the time when they had the pets that give bonuses and things like that. Um, so I don't think we necessarily want to increase the gear gap more. We're looking at um, doing more horizontal progression. That's something we've been saying for a while. Whether it's making more, alternate sets or changing the itemization to allow more sets with more specific play styles and things like that.
Okay. Techno, I remember seeing you once working on a big spreadsheet of armor pieces. Do you have anything to add?
In regards to that spreadsheet, that was kind of mainly for the quest rewards, which I already mentioned previously in the Hunter's Veil gear set, which was improved when we did the Wild Hunt event. But eventually we will be kind of like re-going through some of the older sets and probably touching them up like we did for tier 1 PvP sets in PvE, the Decimator and Carnage set where we added the belt. And later down the line we will be going through some of the older sets, like again like the tier 2 sets, and improving them.
Well, that would be again along the same logic that I was evoking earlier about the quest lines. say like the monetary reward or whatever the other rewards associated with some of the quest lines. I mean, that would be. I think that would be favorable as well, and that kind of detail work that you can do, because there are people who, to this day, there are people who come into Return of Reckoning and still like the PvE segments. Maybe not a lot, but there are some who do. And I always thought, for what this is worth, I always thought the some of the quest lines that are in this game were fun. I mean, they were just as a diversion, right? I mean, they were really fun little quest lines to run. So I'm glad to hear that you guys are paying some attention to that. Okay, any follow up to that before we move on? Okay. Our, our next question comes from John Connor, and John wants to know, does the RoR team feel there are enough incentives for players to keep playing their mains?
So I mean, we can't, yeah, we can't deliver content at a cadence that, say Blizzard can with World of Warcraft, where they just do massive amounts of content. But when it comes to like live events and things, we've got exclusive things for high renown rank players, which encourages people to get those characters up to high levels. And there is a gear ceiling, but keeping content engaging at higher levels we think is important, because some people are going to play alts, but sometimes you might not want to play alts, or you want a reason to. You may have a lot of characters and you just want to play. You'll play which one you need to at the time. And a core of that is making sure RVR content is replayable. And we're going to be doing an RVR rework and things like that. What do you think, Techno?
I mean, you pretty much kind of said it perfectly. Later down the line, like we will be having a bit more incentives to kind of keep people on their mains if they so wish to be, with like the cosmetics we have now, the 80 plus hats.
Yeah, I'm not trying to bring any controversy in here, but if someone were to ask, I think the incentive for playing a main is just because it's your main, and why spend all that time leveling it up and getting all the gear just to stop playing it? I think the reward of playing your main is kind of built in by default, and that's just my 2 cents. We do have a question from. Let me back up here and see if I can. I got to roll up the screen here on my Chromebook. Okay, Heavenly Fury 65. Going back to Land of the Dead for just a moment, says, what about Tomb of the Vulture Lord set coming anytime soon? The particular armor for Tomb of the Vulture Lord, is that again, is that potentially part of the plan?
Well, the PvE armor sets followed a little bit of a different path than the PvP ones. So there is more. There is more stuff to come PvE side. What it exactly is and stat things is yet to be decided, because the main focus is going to be shifting is on Lost Veil first. Lost Veil will be first, and then the rest of the in the sort of dungeon plan of work, and then I'm sure there's infinite future plans of what we do after that.
Just in case there's someone listening who may not be familiar with Lost Veil, Lost Veil is the PvE instance that was accessible through Calidor by jumping off the boat into the water, and I always thought Lost Veil was one of the best PvE instances that Live had to offer. And if you guys are working on that, then that's good. I just thought it was a lot of fun. That particular instance was a lot of fun, so I'm happy to hear that it is in the pipeline, so to speak. So our next question comes from Harley Quinn, and she wants to know any chance to bring the old armory feature back, showing the top 20 renown rank holders.
So that's a good question, and yes, that is something that would be coming back. So a lot of the old functionality, like the existing armory and the sort of the item search things and things on that side, was kind of part of the old system in our website, and the features are slowly being integrated into the kill board. So the armory feature is now on the kill board. And we're going to be implementing things from the sort of RVR stats website. Those are coming over. And there will be a top 20 renown rank holder thing is something that's probably going to be on the roadmap. If not, it's something we can add. I'm sure you can make a post on the forum about what things you'd want to see added to the kill board. Or we can get one of the community managers to do that, and we can take them into consideration when we're adding new features in.
Okay,
yeah.
that's a fair answer. Perfectly fair answer. All right. We have from the Twitch chat, Anderlin is in, and he says, any chance we could get exotic mounts for permanent pets, like maybe at the cost of 75 gil coins, he suggests, or 1,000 gold, something like that. And his point is he would just love to have a permanent pig mount. Is perchance?
So we've been discussing what we want to do, because obviously we hear the frustration from people about limited time pets, and there's sort of two sides to the coin. One is we have limited stuff we can give out for events. Although that is changing, as we've added like the new variants of existing mounts, like the black unicorn that we had recently, with the horn with blood on it and things like that. So that's becoming, we're adding more stuff in, so that barrier is being lifted. And the other sort of side of the coin is, do we necessarily want to have? Would it be on brand to have, an army of people running on pigs around the world? And I think the answer to that is no. So we're trying to consider what we can do to sort of make it better for permanent mounts, and still keep on this agenda. This keep true to the world. So we are looking at doing a number of things. There are a few more variants of mounts that we can use all the time, and there's a few that Mythic had half done, so we're looking at completing those and possibly expanding those to create more variants of the existing ones.
1 second, an ad break, just hit.
Sure.
Okay.
When we get back, Karis, just as far as who else asked what question, just read off, because some of the people that submitted questions are asking, so just read off the name of who submitted the question, if you will.
I swear, man. Yeah, okay. I was just trying to add a little subjective humor. People don't know that Harley Quinn doesn't really exist.
It's not that. Yeah.
I'll continue then. So the other side of that is, do we want the pigs running around 24/7? And we're trying to sort of balance that. We've had some suggestions. We're open to more of them. One thing that's been considered is having so you would mounts that work during the seasonal period. So if we had the stags for Christmas, you could use your stag if you got it last year. So around Christmas, if you've already got your stag, you can keep using it again. After Christmas, the stag no longer works until next Christmas. And then we can, still, because before we would want to release those stags again, but we can create new variants of them to release that one. So you have your stag, your one that you earned several years ago, and then you can get the new stag, but people will see your old one, and then you'll still be able to, say, hey, it's the one I earned ages ago because I'm cool and things like that.
Hold
So
on, Max, the ads are interrupting you.
Well, I mean, I know nobody can hear this, but I'm just going to say real quick. I thought the system, the process of you take one calendar year, there are 4 major live events, and if each of those give a different temporary mount, then basically you can have a unique mount all year round. It's just a different one. Was that? I mean, is that kind of the basic philosophy?
So at the moment you can. That's pretty much how you can do it. I think we've expanded our live event thing massively. So we're planning to have a live event for every month. So that's what we're trying to build up our arsenal of live events. So we're seeing lots of new ones now, and then we'll next year we'll reuse some. We may add another one and have ones that alternate, but we will have a bank of live events. And we'll probably be trying out new things with mounts. We'll be getting discussions with the rest of the team, discussing ideas and things. So it's something that we hear. We're trying to find a good solution that kind of is the best of both worlds.
That's one of those where, I mean, again, I'm speaking just for myself, and this since the ad is still running, but
It's
that's
done.
one of those
Dad's
I think.
Done.
Okay, all right. Then welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is the Toth podcast. And we're running off down a list of questions for our special guest. Max Heyman is here, and along with Techno. And they've been gracious enough to come in and spend some time with us. And while the commercials were running, we were, just talking about the mounts. And I won't ask Max to repeat all that, but they're aware of the issue and trust the higher powers. I'll put it that way. All right. Our next question on the list. Any word on dev code or roster size? Is the team big enough to handle so many game modes such as PvE, ORVR, normal scenarios, ranked, Land of the Dead, City Siege, yada yada yada?
So that's a good question. I mean, we've always really had like 2 or 3 coders. Sometimes we've had more. Sometimes we have people who can give a lot of time, and then we have, maybe 3 other people who can give only a little bit of time. But we've been, as we've been doing things, every new system that kind of gets added is always built with the idea that it doesn't need coders to do stuff. And it's all data driven. So the new ability system, we have tools that allow designers to construct new abilities for events or change things for balance and things like that. So these tools, everything's data driven. The tools, the code is very minimal, and it's just a system that runs. If you want to make changes, you edit the data. And that's what we've been focusing on. So the live events that were done, this live event that's currently active was completely done by designers, and no code was added. I did a couple things, but that were just fixing some art stuff. But that's not necessarily, we try and make everything that's quests can all be not by non-coders. The art things can be done by non-coders. So it's all we're big on building tools that allow people who are unfortunately not able to, they can't code, and it seems weird to say no to people working on things just because they can't code. So we've been building everything in a way that we can focus on people being able to do great stuff, who are good at making great stuff.
Techno, you do a lot of work on live event stuff. Is that correct?
Yeah, I help out when I can.
Okay. The live events, I think, have again just over time have grown more and more interesting and more fun. Can you talk for maybe just a minute about how you guys, how all you little scamps get together and come up with this stuff?
Oh, that's mainly up to Ekheim. He's kind of like the headmaster of designing events. Then me and Ruby will work down the list of the ideas and start to implement them one by one. And if we return to a previous event, like the Wild Hunt, for example, which was the event when we released Hunter's Veil, when it came back, I believe this year of March, we added a good handful of new things for it. So when the event did come back, it was unique and people had new things to do. And it was the same with Feast of Shuika this year, where we added a few things. So it's still unique and new.
Well, the live event which allowed the invasion of the opposition city is that one going to come back around at some point?
Yeah, it
You
will.
think it
Yeah,
will?
Night of Murder.
Night of that was so much fun. I swear, man, that was so much fun. So it'll be nice to see that one come back around. All right, our next question: the PvP tactics slots were taken out, but Tome tactics slots were left in. A lot of new players are asking in advice channels how to get these. Are there any plans to do something with the Tome tactics sooner or later?
This is a good question. So the tone tactics system was, yeah, for people who don't know, it's sort of tactics but for PvE. So you'd have ones that would change the amount of damage you do against certain types of monsters, or things like that. So the way the sort of the stat system worked in the old ability system, the one that's currently live, is your ability would be applied, your stat is lowered, which means when fighting with a particular monster, not probably technically possible, but not really feasible to check all that stuff in real time. Just the way the system was designed, because it was never designed with it in mind. So the new system, um, the tome tactics are working out of the box essentially. So we've some work has been done on them to check them out. There's obviously the way how to get them needs to be fixed up. So it's something that's definitely coming soon. And there's the system's working. They just need to finish them, cross some T's, dot some I's, and that stuff. So it should be quite exciting. It's one of those things that we can do now with the new ability system, which is really cool.
Okay.
And again, guys, just see, the questions that are currently being asked are, I'll run through a couple of the names: Bombling, Hab, and a number of others in chat and across the server are the ones who submitted these questions. So thank you again to everybody that has submitted the questions that are being gone over. Continue, Karis.
Actually, I think I have that list, but I didn't print that one. But anyway, let's see where we're at here. Okay, our next question up for grabs. A lot of cool ideas have been aired for making city sieges, including the new RoR capitals. But what about normal city sieges, which is the bread and butter of the main replay loop? Any concept ideas or willingness to improve on the zone locks and keep city sieges in RoR? That's actually like three questions in one. Let me just back. If you don't mind this time, let me break this down. Okay. Aired for making city sieges, including the RoR capitals. Let's start there. The two new capitals. People have talked about that already. Maybe having a city siege mechanic where you invade the orc city or you invade the dwarf city. Anything you can bring to light there?
Yeah. So We shared a lot of ideas of what we're going to do for the new capitals and things like that, um, and fortresses, things we want to change. But the majority of our VR stuff, which is below fortresses, we did have some things that we were going to say in the last developer update, but we just we cut it at the last minute just because we didn't want to. The stuff is still being sort of designed, so we didn't want to, put our foot in our mouth in
Right.
that one. But we have got some cool concept ideas, and we are willing to improve the zone locks and keep sieges. To answer the question, so we've got, we're working on a bigger RVR update that we want to do, and we're designing, but we are looking to do sort of stuff in the meantime. So little improvements. I think one thing we want to do is improve when defending a keep, reclaiming things like that. So after a keep siege, but you don't manage to capture things, reclaiming your keep, and other sort of things we're thinking of adding to improve the dynamic in the meantime. But we have, it's definitely something that's coming up on the agenda as a big thing that we are looking to do.
Okay. Techno, any thoughts?
In regards to like the KP and the KAK, like they will probably be siegeable at one point. Like you will be able to participate in a city siege, but I mean that's not anytime soon. Partly because like the maps are very huge and there's
Yeah.
multiple levels to them.
Well, as an associated question, I guess. There are the two scenarios, uh, the IC and the outdoor scenario, that tend to pop up only when there's a city siege going on and become active, for those who aren't in the city siege. And personally, again, I enjoy both of those scenarios. I think they're good scenarios. Is there any chance that those could just be opened up for the standard rotation every now and then, like all the other scenarios that get cycled through?
So that's a that's a good question. But that is. I don't know if we're going to bring them exclusively back into the rotation. But I think when we sort of add the stage onto city sieges that we want to do, to expand the scope of city sieges, there will be more chances to play them if you're not participating in the city siege itself. So it will be a longer window they're open for.
Okay.
So yeah, kind of yes to that question, kind of no.
Well, but my question again is motivated, like a lot of mine, is that from the basic premise that variety is the spice of life, and I just think that the more options that players have on a format like this, the more likely they are to remain engaged. And and again, I appreciate your answer. All I'm saying is I just think those are two really good, really cool FCs. That's all. And so if it comes around at some point, that they're more accessible, that will be cool. All right. Up next are all of the accessories, armor sets, weapons up to I guess it's meant to be par. It's listed as pair, but anyway, up to par in terms of item level against the other equipment slots.
So what other equipment slots do you mean? Jewelry?
Uh, that was the complete question. So let me see. All the accessories, armor sets, weapons up to par in terms of item level against the other equipment. I suppose they're referring to, just as an example, take Conqueror gear.
Right.
Whatever level. I don't remember the top of my head what level gear that is. But how would that match up against uh, the other jewelry slots and stuff like that that you could find out in the open realm? That's what
So
I get from the question. I may be wrong, but that's kind of what I get.
okay. I mean, we're going to be revisiting items and things and itemization when we're doing more horizontal progression things. So we want to allow players to have more variety in their playstyle with not necessarily compromising as much. So you won't. At the moment, you have to like, if you want to have more variety, you have to kind of not have a complete set. But we want players to be able to be more flexible. I think that's important.
Well, Techno, this is kind of in your wheelhouse, I think, because I mean, you do some set work here and there, right? Do you have anything to add?
If I'm understanding the question correctly, like if you're take let's take like Annihilator and Conquer, for example, like the equivalent jewelry set for that level would be Genesis, give or take. And Genesis, which is the set bonus jewelry set, I think some pieces are better than others. So maybe like we'd be able to revisit that and tweak them a little bit and tweak down the line and up the line sooner or later.
Okay, that brings to my mind another question, but it's a little off topic of what we're doing here, so I'll save it. And if there's time at the end, you guys don't mind, I'll ask it then. And it's just about the open world jewelry slot sets that are out there. But okay, but moving on for now. The Renowned Gain nerf, which happened 1 or 2 summers ago, did it have the intended effect, or is it time to revisit that nerf?
So I mean, we're gonna revisit the overall RVR scenario gain probably at some point. It's always something we're gonna constantly come around to, and adjust when necessary. But I mean, regarding to the nerf, what we did, we buffed some renown gain, and then 3 weeks later there was nerfed some other ones. And since then we've also buffed renown gains around an extra 50% if you're in a group. But at the moment, scenario versus RVR gains are probably a bit off, and we're going to be looking at that probably in the future.
Well, here I am going to interject, if you guys will indulge me just for a moment, because this actually came up last night during my stream. And I hail from the time on the server when the renown gain, once you hit rank 40, your renown gain from that point on was at 25%, meaning that for every 4 renown points you actually earned, you only got 1. And so I tend, as one of the players who've been around for a while, I tend to look at these questions through that prism. Okay, if you're worried about the renown rank gain as it exists right now, you should have been here in the glory days, right? So I don't really have a problem with I don't have any issues at all with what you guys have done with the renown. And I don't know. I think the renown game system as it stands right now is fine. But again, that's just my opinion. But it's based on what used to be. So if either of you have any comment on that, please feel free. If not, we'll move on.
I think it's just going to be one of those things that's never, it's a perpetual game. Nothing. It's going to be one of these things that's never done. We're always going to be revisiting it, tweaking things.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect.
Well, yeah, you can never make everybody happy all the time. It's an old saying, but yeah. And
also, as we add new content, if we added another set of gear and squashed the gear and things like that, these all things are going to be tweaked everywhere and things like that.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right, up next, and this is a question again that I was kind of waiting to get to this one. The Garden of Quark, and I call it that because I never quite learned how to pronounce. What is it? Quap. Quap. Okay, all right. Was labeled in an article as groundbreaking and never seen before content for Return of Reckoning, but it was then left in a buggy and unused state. Any update or word for this content? I love the place, so please, the floor is yours.
Well, this was one of those things that I think we could have done a lot better. It was probably rushed at the time, and we will, there will be a time where we revisit it in the future. So we were having a lot of problems with when it came to same realm battles. We were having just some problems with that, which caused some bugs. And we felt like people who wanted to use it, sort of events or, if you wanted to run tournaments and things like that, you didn't quite have it didn't quite fulfill what you needed to do that. And so it was, and the people coming to the arena was too big, so you couldn't necessarily see all the fights on the other side. And those sort of things we've kind of got on our radar of things we want to fix. So I think one of the comments was making it smaller. So we're thinking, making it smaller, trying to think of a way we can let people use it for events. So we can turn on event mode and then hand it over to people, and then they can do the games and things like that. But it's when we come around to revisiting it, and at the moment, that's probably not going to be for. There's a lot more things, like the RVR system is more higher priority, and finishing off the ability rework. That's the higher priority. And when we have some downtime, it's something that we'll look at. And it's a shame, and we will get around to it. And we need to sort of do a bit more time working out what would be the best things that the community want from it, be able to deliver good events. So it's going to be something that we're going to have to do a lot of, communication with the team and to get a hold of the information.
I think it'd be a great 6v6 platform, I guess, or format. And but like you say, at some point in the future. Okay. Our next question all right, this one references the video you made, Max, and the mention in the video of the new world editor. Question is, does that mean that flaws in the game world, such as the big gaping hole under South Black Crag Keep, can get fixed, and other abnormal world designs? And where does fixing things like that, where does that land on the priority ranking for new implementation?
That's a good question. So, and kind of multiple. I'm not sure what hole they're referring to exactly. Do you know that?
I do not.
Okay. Because the only thing I can really think of is there's a passage that's kind of under into this two levels, and then there's like a drop down between them. But I think that's more of a gameplay mechanic area. You can go down there. It's a sort of design. It was designed to be like that. But yes, we will be able to modify the terrain in the world. Right now, the tool's kind of being focused on building new zones, and creating one from scratch. Using new tile sets for areas or something. And we will be once it's mature enough, we will be going back to make any fixes when we get time to other areas. How does it land in the priority? I think it's going to be one of those things that it really depends what the problem is, and when the tool is mature enough as well. But if it's on the bug tracker, people can vote for things based on priority. There's a little priority thing where you can say I want this to be fixed. I think I can remind myself of how that looks. But I know there is a feature to be able to do that. So if there is an issue that you think, I really want this to be fixed, we can sort by it, and you can put in, it's called a gauge support, so it's quite far down, and you can say you're a strong supporter, inclined in favor, inclined against, or strong rejection. So if you think this is really something that should be done a higher priority, you can vote that, and then we can see what people are expressing. They really want X fixed, and we can kind of prioritize that. So I encourage people to do that and engage with the bug tracker.
I think one of the big things kind of like regarding the maps is probably mountains and slopes. they're not all alike, so I don't know if that's a problem with like the game engine or how the maps were designed. Because like there's some mountains and slopes that doesn't look like you should be able to go up them, but you can, and some others that look like you can perfectly go up them, but you just get stopped. So
Yeah, when implementing the pathfinding system, this is quite quite funny. I would run the data of the world through the system, and it would give me a visualization of where NPCs can walk. And I'd be like, no way can a player walk from there to there? And it'd be like a small channel route that they could walk through, and I'd be, no way, there's got to be a problem with it. And I'd go in game, go over to that thing, and manage to walk up a steep hill just following this exact path. So there's so many different areas that are like that, and you don't realize until there's no way you would get that right path to walk up there. And if you learnt that,
yeah,
you'd be at an advantage. So yeah, that's something we'll look at. Obviously, there's some are more higher priority than others, but
Well, now again, this is just an offshoot of from your answer, and based on nothing more than curiosity. So, uh, and from the perspective that I myself am not a coder, but is it possible? Not that it has to happen or any of that stuff, but I mean, is it possible that if you guys wanted to, that at some point in the future you could create a whole new zone? Is that something that's within the capability? And again, I'm
yeah.
just curious. That's all. I'm just curious.
So creating obviously, if to create a completely brand new zone, we need to create a new tile set. So say if we were making I'm going to pull another race completely like a lizard man world, we would create the new lizard man assets, kind of get the aesthetics going, and once we've got all the tile sets, we can start sculpting the land and then building the models for buildings and things like that, or trees or things like that. And that's something we can do. And there's some stuff that needs adding to the tool because some things are a bit rough to do, um, and
Okay.
it just optimized. But that's something that we can do, and we're kind of designing the functionality to be able to do all of that. Whether or not that's going to be the first thing we do is another story. Because if we were going to create a brand new complete zone, there's a lot of artwork to go with that. But we want to be able to do that in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, that sounds cool. That sounds cool. That's and I mean, if and when it ever happened, I mean, that would be absolutely amazing to go fight lizard men. That would really be nice. All right, next question. Warhammer never had an enemy cast bar on offensive target. Is that something the Return of Reckoning devs have ever thought about? Are there any coding difficulties or reasons to not have it implemented? Or would it not fit into the game style of the server?
Well, the game out of the box doesn't support enemy cast bars. So we are limited to what it can do from that point. I mean, it's probably technically possible if we to add it. If we can make a lot of edits to the game assembly code, and it's very tedious to do that. But we've done it for a few things and fixed bugs through that. And I guess the reason we haven't really considered it if it will fit into the style of game at all. And it's one of these things that I guess it could be a quality of life. But the quality of life list is quite long at the moment.
Yeah, I think that would fall in if I into the category of probably a fluff endeavor, something that would look cool, but it isn't really that impactful. Would that be a fair way to say it?
Yeah, it's something that it's just not. We haven't got around to considering it at all, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to the next question, let me just say once again that you are listening to the Toth podcast. Toth is in the house. He's currently handling the most of the Twitch chat that's going on. But this is the Toth podcast, and I am your host. I'm just sort of moderating so that he doesn't have to do all the talking. But we do appreciate you watching Toth podcast, and we're discussing issues associated with the server with both Max Heyman and Techno. So, to continue, our next question is, the way diminishing returns works and scans nearby players in Land of the Dead, could the devs see any value in having the same scanning of nearby enemy friendlies for ORVR and make AAO local instead of pairing wide?
So that's something that I think is on the board to be considered for the new RVR modernizing effort, and we are looking at other ways to prevent or not encourage zerging or give more reason to not saying no to zergs is it might not always work, but giving people reason to split off, and maybe split up to take two objectives or something like that and surround enemies and things. We're looking at other ways to address the issue than just changing AAO to be local, although that is something that's will be considered. What other impacts do you think if AAO local will have instead of would it cause people to necessarily try and just stay out of range and just hover around to try and surround people or things like that? It's I think it's not as quite straight cut as just make it local and things will be fixed. So I'm curious, what do you think?
Well, the way I don't get that much into the weeds when it comes to questions like how is AAO calculated, but just on a surface level, I think with what happens a lot in the zones is that somebody running a warband or two will take their warband out of the zone so that it cuts out the so that they drop from the calculation. It's sort of a tactic to employ to help confuse your enemy as to who it is, or the numbers that they're actually up against. And so they'll take themselves out and then come roaring back in and attempt to take advantage. Now, something like that, I see that as nothing more than a tactic, right? A tactic employed by warband leaders to help try to win the fight. Therefore, I support it. But I'm looking at it from just the sort of tactical level of trying to outmaneuver your opposition. What I get from this, again, not the question itself, what I took from the question is that's the kind of thing that they are attempting to address, so that no matter where someone is in the entire zone, it will still count in the AAO calculation. Now, am I getting that right? Is that what you sort of took from the question? That no matter where you are in the zone, you'll still count?
Yeah, I mean that was it's I can't remember the rules off the top of my head because it's quite a complex equation, but I assume the question's moving from that kind of model to a more local model. So yeah, there's something that's being considered, and we're trying to think of other ways to do it than just an AAO. We want to give incentives other than
AAO is certainly useful if you can. You click on someone and you can see what percentage either you're setting at or they're setting at. It does sort of help you make decisions on how to fight a particular zone. But I also think it can be easily manipulated. For those who want to try to do it, I think it can be easily manipulated. But I don't see that as an issue. So I'm not sure what I mean, in all honesty, I'm not sure what value that may be.
Yeah, I mean, we're rethinking everything to do with RVR.
Yeah.
So it's definitely we're trying to think of it from a clean slate, and then we're going to take things we like and improve them and change things. So it's definitely a a big reconsideration of everything.
I've always been a big fan of, especially given my background in the Army, I've always been a big fan of trying to fool the opposition into, into believing one thing when you're actually doing something else. So, anyway, I appreciate your answer. Techno, you got anything before I move on?
It's definitely a lot to reconsider for RVR, but as we go on, we'll kind of figure it out.
Okay. And again, this when you talk, you mentioned Max, you mentioned the priority issue a few times since we've been along here. And I mean, no disrespect to whoever it was that asked this question. Certainly, I don't. But this one does seem like it might be low on the priority list. Maybe. That's just you don't have to answer if you don't want to. But all right. The next question: there seems to be a stark imbalance of order taking forts during NA prime time with little to no resistance. And the caveat here is we haven't had many outdoor city instances over the last year. That is true. Most of the city fights do tend to take place in the inevitable city. So if the two of you could comment on that as you would, please.
I mean, I don't have the exact numbers for how many have been done. I'm sure we can definitely pull them. But I mean, are you thinking? What are you thinking is the main cause of this? Is it just player behavior, or just there's more order on at that time of night, or what like that? Because there's
Well,
definitely been periods where destruction have been completely dominating the RVR, and then there's also times of order, and it flips. But
well, given in the times that I typically play, I have seen that there have been far more city instances which take place in the inevitable city than, in fact, let's say the last 10 cities that I have fought in, 9 of them have been in the inevitable city. And of course, my observation, of course, has to be limited to the time of day that I play. So I can't speak for the full 24-hour rotations. But during those normal hours, it seems to me that the forts are rarely defended on on an aggressive level. And I have my theory as to why that is, but as far as the question at hand, I think the forts often fall into that category of, okay, just let the opposition take the fort, and then we'll go back to the zones and fight it out there, right?
yeah, and we obviously had that when we had fortress related crests and then city related crest. As the incentive is get us to the city, because then we can get the better rewards, and
Right.
whether that's conceding on one side or what. So, when we unified the currency, I think that did a good effort to, there's not necessarily an explicit reason to go to the fort, to just roll over. But it gives there's more reason to defend, and we're obviously trying to improve the reason of why you would want to defend your city, and we are definitely planning on things to make it more, whether it addresses this specific issue of NA is I wouldn't say definitely. I will have to look at the specific question, but
Well,
yeah, Techno, what do you think? Oh, sorry.
my evidence is I admit my evidence is anecdotal because it's just based off of what I see. But yeah, Techno, what are your thoughts?
I mean, there's kind of multiple factors for this one, especially kind of during NA prime time, because NA prime time is the smaller player base amount. So, like, say one night, oh, there's not really many leaders on Destro, or there's not many people on order, period. So, I mean, it's pretty much a night to night basis, but I think overall, order kind of tends to be a little bit heavier during NA prime time. But there's multiple factors that kind of go into it, and again, it's a night to night basis.
Uh, I also think that, well, and particularly when it comes to NA prime time, when you're talking about forts, defending forts, sometimes it's also a factor of the number of people who happen to be on at that particular time. And, I'm not saying I condone anything, but I understand how that mechanic works. Because you can have more, just from a tactical point of view, again, let's say you're playing Destro and you're outnumbered and order trips a fort. Okay, you're going to have, that you're going to have more opportunity for success if you're out in the open lakes running around looking for particular fights than you potentially will trying to defend a fort when you're outnumbered 3-1. And so I understand the decision. Okay, well, let's just blow it off and let them have it, and then we'll fight, when it's over. I understand that, but I don't. It's not that I condone it, but I do understand it. Um, and I'm not sure, other than having more people on at a particular time, I'm not sure exactly how one would address that issue. Uh, if either of you wish to comment, please feel free. Check 1 2. Am I still on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just thinking if there's much more to sort of add.
Again, it just kind of like really depends on the night.
Yeah. All right. I want to warn everyone in advance. Before I get to this next question, let me say one more time that this is the Toth podcast. And I am just sort of acting as moderator so that he doesn't have to do all the talking. And I'm happy to help out, and I appreciate Toth letting me do this. I really do. I appreciate Toth letting me do this. But this is the Toth podcast, and we thank you for watching. The next question, I do have a rather fervent opinion about. I will let you guys comment first, and then if you want to hear what I have to say, please feel free. But the question is, what is the logic behind further restricting stealth, which barely works as it is? Take it away, Max.
So is this in regard to the new ability changes?
It doesn't specify, but I would guess so.
I can touch on that. It's in regard to how the stealth classes are currently working. From what I've heard from both Wheeze and Witch Hunters, they feel that their stealth ability is just not working hardly at all. Where it constantly fails on them. Is what I've been told. So that's why that question has been asked.
Okay. I mean, we're not deliberately breaking them, if that's the case. If there are bugs where they say they're not working in the way they're expecting.
That's what I'm inclined to believe, but it wasn't really specified. They feel like they've been nerfed. They're like, well, it was working fine before this last patch. Now it's not working. I'm like, something had to have broken, yet I've not heard any kind of detailed other than people just screaming that the stealth's not working right. So that's what.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any specific change has gone in to, definitely not to deliberately do that in like what's currently live. So if there is a bug, report it on the bug tracker and upvote it, and we'll take a look. Maybe the question was relating to the new abilities changes.
It's possible.
So I mean, maybe incognito. So that's the only one I can think of.
I think Incognito and Shadow Prowler.
Yeah, so I mean, at least incognito was on it. I think back on Mythic, it drained 4 AP a second. And I think when we when we looked through the patch notes for the beginning, which would have been 148, and then Return of Reckoning, the patch notes were a bit inconsistent, and we couldn't really find anywhere that mentioned it was changed to 3 action points. So it was. It may have been wrongly implemented as 3 action points from the beginning. I can't find any specific patch note that mentions it particularly. I mean, there in 2020, the 30-second duration was removed. So you're still, you would still run out, exit stealth when you run out of AP. But the longest you could stay in stealth was around, a minute and a half. And the longer you stay in, the less action points you have when you leave. And then we later extended the AP pool, so it became more close to 2 minutes. And changing it to 5 AP a second will cut it down to around 1 minute. But like on Mythic, it was, you could stay in stealth for around 30 seconds.
30 seconds, yeah.
Yeah, so we're still way above that, but there are also other things that we're fixing with stealth. So I think at the moment, if you enter stealth, you can't exit until the cooldown is over.
Right.
But in the new ability system that's fixed, you can exit whenever you want, and so it works more like a toggle ability now. So there are positives that we're implementing, and once we have everything out there, we're going to obviously review everything and move forward from that point.
Well, as a Witch Elf player, and just for reference to those listening, my Witch Elf is up to 85. But anyway, as a Witch Elf player who started leveling the Witch Elf back when the system here on Return of Reckoning was you could stay in stealth for 30 seconds, and then it was changed to somewhere between 90 seconds and even up to 2 minutes in certain circumstances. And having operated under both systems, I prefer the system as it is now. When you could stay in stealth, I will admit that when you could stay in stealth for 30 seconds before you had to come out, your planning was a bit more detailed as to how you were going to approach a particular target or approach a keep or approach some hiding location where you wanted to try to, to gank people or whatever. The increase, of course, allowed you a lot more leeway, which I prefer, but I also think that makes sense. I also believe that makes sense in context of the world we operate in, right? There are multiple ways to look at an issue like this. When it comes to the fantasy world that we're operating in, the immersion that we take, it makes sense to me that witch elves and witch hunters would be able to stay in stealth for a longer period of time because that is their key attribute, right? That is their key attribute, surprise. And so I think the current system works fine. Now, again, for whatever that's worth to anybody, I think that the current system is fine. And I would hate, and it's like any other change that comes down the pike, you adapt, right? If something has changed, you just adapt. But I wouldn't want to see it change to any great degree that all of a sudden, when you can stay in stealth up to, say, a minute 45 seconds or something like that, and then all of a sudden it goes back to 30, that changes the whole dynamic. So,
like in terms of that, but the ability. So now that you can leave stealth whenever you want correctly,
now that would be fine. Yeah, I get that.
it does
get
allow
that.
a bit more freedom. So
Right.
it's kind of. Are we meant to then? Now that it works in the nobility system, are we meant to break it so preserve the exact same functionality? So it's a fix that's gone in, not on purpose, just because it's working in the new system, and that has an effect where if you can be in stealth for 2 minutes and you can immediately come out and go back in whenever you want. You could almost have essentially infinite stealth, because you have 2 minutes to get between wherever you're going, and then you can go out and then back in. So I mean, we've kind of tried to find a line between not breaking the functionality again. So we want to make sure the toggle thing's still working, but kind of having, whereas it's 30 seconds on Mythic and we had like 1 minute 40, I think. So we kind of took the middle, and then we're going to review that to see how it plays. And
Right.
once we do more on the new ability system, once we do more tests, which we will be doing probably quite soon, we're going to we'll have time to review it.
Well, as a player, I'm going to give my opinion as a player, and I think looking at it from an order perspective, especially since I spend a lot of time out running solo or in small groups, it's the notion that you have to take into account, okay, I'm going to go from A to B, and somewhere along A to B, there may be a witch elf or two waiting for me. To me, that prospect just makes the game more fun. And then looking at it as from a witch elf perspective, I know that okay, somebody is going to be running from A to B or to C to D, so I'm going to go set myself up so I can, so that I can. That's the essence of the game, man. That's what makes the game worth playing, and that's all I'm advocating for. You guys are the masters, Max. I understand that you guys are the masters at putting in the changes and all that, and I've never had any issue with that. My concern as a player uh, is that I just want the game to continue to offer that sort of challenge, right? That unseen challenge that you have to take into account when you're doing anything. I think that just adds to the game, and that's my primary comment. So, all right. The next question. Okay, you've already addressed that one. So let's skip that one and go on to what is the Lost Veil roadmap, and what stage of that roadmap are you currently on?
So that's a good question. So we've got some boss mechanics coded, and with the new ability system, we have to go through every dungeon to make sure everything's still working, because the way things worked, it could be slightly different. So we're going through those. So it's in terms of bosses, it's on that list in terms of bosses. So with the new ability system, we're building out NPC ability sets. So they're using the correct abilities from live. So it means NPCs all over the world, not exclusively Lost Veil or dungeons, will have a lot more abilities. They'll have a lot more effects, and they all work really nicely. So there'll be like one thing I've noticed, and some of them is that, they do the ground stomps and it all lines up perfectly, and things that don't work in the current system, and all NPCs are a bit boring to interact with. So everything that's working there, so everything's a bit more lit up. So
Yeah, they'd
those,
be go on.
there you carry on.
They'd be more unique to fight instead of just mostly running up to you and auto attacking you.
Yeah, and it works quite nice. So we're doing that for the Lost Veil as well, so that we're going to have the non-boss abilities covered. And another thing we were considering was Lost Veil was a long dungeon, and modern MMOs have moved away from the multiple hours dungeons to more, hour length or something like that. I guess as the MMO crowd gets older, they have less time. I don't think I'd be able to do 3 hours of dungeon in one evening. So we're considering how we can, it's perfectly aligned that you could split it up into 3 wings. We're kind of trying to work out if that would work, how it would work, and things like that. But currently we're finishing the rework of the existing dungeons to get them out, and then and that system will, part of the Lost Veil is being done on that. Some of it's already coded and it'll be revisited, and then things like that. So it's on the list after the ability system. So it's quite yeah, it's getting there.
Okay, there's only one question, although the question's in 3 parts. There's only one question left on the list. So before we get to that, let me ask, if you don't mind, can you address a rumor for me, please? And trust me, there's nothing There's no trap here. Okay, there's nothing controversial. This is just a rumor I've heard. I've heard that out there somewhere in the Warhammer world, there is like this pirate event that's going on now. That's somewhere out there, and there has been for a long time. There is like a secret cache of weapons, and if somebody finds it, you get like a really unique, whatever it may be, appropriate to your character, but they're incredibly hard to find and get to. Is there any truth to that at all? I've had more than a few people talk to me about that.
That doesn't sound like anything we've done.
Are you talking about intentionally put there by us?
Yeah, yes, it's something that's just out there that is never advertised, and it's sort of waiting for somebody to stumble across. Is that, like I said, I've had enough people ask me about it that I thought I would just ask you if there was any truth to that. You know, that one of the devs created this and put it in a really remote location, and
You're talking like an Easter egg.
yeah, exactly, just something that's like an Easter egg out there.
So you're referring to like an Easter egg we put in there deliberately, or are you talking about
Yeah.
someone hiding something in the world that they weren't meant to?
Well, no, not as something that like that you guys deliberately put out there, but never talk about, just in case somebody happens.
I'm sure that there have been Easter eggs that have been put in the world, and some are spotted, some are not. I know like there were Easter eggs put in for the dwarf and greenskin cities. I probably very, very specific ones, and because there's so much content, I can probably only remember a few of them. And there's always little nods to things here and there, I think. And sorry, carry on.
That I think this is a question Mike can answer a little better since I spent so much time doing quest guides. The answer is yes. There are Easter eggs in the game throughout the dwarf cities. Hold on, ad break, and I'll finish answering. We got two almost three minutes.
Yeah, I mean we've and it's something Mythic did, right? They were big on the. Oh, we got an ad.
One second.
Okay.
That's why I said 1 minute.
Oh, another ad has come up.
Yeah, I've tried to shut them off. Twitch won't let me turn them off.
1 of 7.
Yeah, it's only supposed to be a minute 30 seconds.
Wow.
Well, there's only one question left. Like I said on the list, it's a 3-part question, but deals with armor, 2-hand tanks. That's actually the very last part of this. Actually, is a pretty good question. Tank warlord S&B tank armor is what it talks about, and the toughness. So whenever the commercial deluge stops, I'll go on to that. And Max, I appreciate you coming in.
Hey, no problem. It's one of those things that I think we always had an open invite, but an open invite isn't specific. So, there's a lot of
open invite literally meant anytime y'all wanted to come on, you just had to
of course,
tell me.
but it's just one of those things, and if someone open invites to something, it's no plans have been made, right? So it's yeah.
Yeah,
and then I'll be like, I'm quite busy working on some random things for someone who wants something, and yeah. But I think we make it a more regular thing.
That's
That's good.
that's why I worded it the way I did. Is I was like, you let me know what works around the schedule you guys have. I'll do the rest.
Unfortunately, you can't buy the beer for a Twitch summit like this. There's no way to put the incentive in there, right?
So I'm checking out your characters. Do any of you have the limited edition steins that we have on the characters? I can see mine's
I
on my
got one.
waist.
No, I don't have it on this guy. I have it on I think I have it on my tank on Lord Kern. That's it.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. When we made this, the Mythic obviously made
we're
the
back. We're live.
oh,
Chat can hear us.
That's fine. I mean, Mythic obviously released the steins that you could buy, and the gold ones and the silver ones, but they had prototypes of a dwarf one and a greenskin one that were cancelled, and there's two prototypes that exist. I know where one is, but we were trying to find the artist. We found who did them, because we only got like some pictures, and we got more artwork, so we had to kind of improvise these little steins that you can see on my waist for the dwarf event.
Let me zoom in.
But there is
I want that. Give me.
So there is there's one dwarf one that exists in the real world, and then there's one greenskin one at least that exists in the real world. So yeah. But yeah. Anyway, back to the questions.
Yeah, well, Fashion Hammer's a big. It's just a quick side note. Fashion Hammer's a big thing with a lot of people, and I thought the Steins are, one of those things worth chasing myself. All right, here we go. We're down now, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, this is the Toth Monra podcast. We do appreciate you listening, and we still have with us Max and Techno, and we have come at last to the final question on the list. It is a three-part question, so the first part is, are there any plans to revisit itemization? And the caveat there is, currently, due to the stat squish, making raw stats far more desirable compared to live, there are not many cases in which going past 3 to 5 pieces of the same set is a competitive choice. Specifically, I will add, what they're getting at here, as I see it, is there's not much incentive to wearing like 7-piece of anything when you can mix and match and actually get a better overall stat boost. So, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, I mean we've been talking about this, and it's obviously a consideration when we've been trying to move things to more horizontal progression. But we want to increase the amount of play styles players have. So we see people kind of taking advantage of that by doing split sets. And I think we want to allow people to be able to do that. We want a bit more choice in gear, not just one or two cookie cutter setups. So we would kind of want to. I think that will fit well into horizontal progression, having people can have more choice. They can do whatever they want. So that is something. I mean, obviously, nothing set in stone yet, but it's something we want to do. What do you think, Techno?
I mean, over time, it's gotten better with like being able to mix and match, and I'm sure later on there'll be more options out there.
Yeah, because obviously you can, even if you like the whole set, you can appearance it over.
Yeah.
So that's not really a problem.
Optimus Perm is in the Twitch chat, and he has a question about vertical progression. The question is framed as, why is vertical progression kind of frowned upon? If either of you have a comment on that, please.
That's a good question. So I guess because it's primarily a PvP game, and that involves players playing against each other, and Yeah, it's just it's a PvP centric game. So whereas if you consider, let's say, another World of Warcraft is big on their vertical progression. That's all they do. Every year or two they release a massive new chunk of content. Everything else below it is essentially pointless, and people play all these new dungeons and raids and things like that, and that costs a lot of money. They have hundreds of people working on their team. I can't remember the exact number, but it's way higher. And they got to, every year they have to vertically progress people up, which involves creating a whole new content. So it also creates a sort of gap, and they have to squish all the rest of the content, which means cutting out half the content. So lots of content from other expansions kind of gets thrown completely away, essentially, and the leveling path gets smaller. And then they did the big crunch recently. Whereas we got to be a bit more sustainable. So and everyone's grouped together to play against each other. So people who just got to level 16 and people who are level 40 with a really high renown rank are in the same battlefield. So kind of reducing the gap between those, allowing everyone to be a bit more competitive against each other, is I think more important. And obviously we want people to be able to work towards stuff. So having other content they can get, which is more horizontal to it, maybe if we, a Land of the Dead set, and that could have cool cosmetics and slightly different stats and things that allow you to play in a slightly different way, and kind of it's more of a, that might be the best meta for your playstyle. And maybe if balance changes, then you want to move to another set of gear or have different sets of gear for different things.
If you don't mind, I'm sorry, if you don't mind, let me bring a specific into this, what you're saying. The Bloodlord gear from Bastion Stair. Now, I know this isn't uniform across all classes, but the Bloodlord gear combined with the Bloodlord Greatsword for a two-hand Swordmaster, I've always thought is just phenomenal stuff. Sentinel gear out of Crimson Tunnels is the lower set to that, but also was very beneficial to a two-hand Swordmaster. And I've often thought that when it comes to armor sets overall, right, that anybody on any class can go out and get. When it comes to PvE, Bloodlord is kind of the crown jewel, right? That's my opinion. That Bloodlord gear is kind of the crown jewel, and it's well worth the time to go and get. So, based on the stuff you were just talking about, and again, I'm not trying. Don't misunderstand my question, but was that intentional, or did it just sort of work out by happenstance that Bloodlord gear fell into that that category?
I mean, so when the PvP gear was introduced originally by us and added in, the philosophy's kind of changed a bit. We've been adding PvE because that's been coming a lot later. So, currently the top gear is PvP set, and we slowly added more tiers climbing up in PvE, and that is just having the PvE, something of that being the best. For something at the moment, it's just one. You could get all the top PvP stuff, but then doing some dungeons, getting stuff that gets you something else is slightly cool. So kind of expanding the content you can do. We want you to be able to be, you could do any one of these paths and have good content, good gear, good things like that. But if you want to really be able to master everything and get like the best in slot, but not everything's going to be best in slot. We want the combinations of everything to be better, and just because I mean it's also a good question to think how would Mythic have played out this approach, because they couldn't have followed World of Warcraft completely, because you just delete loads of content, and if it's PvP focused, it kind of doesn't work.
Well,
and they obviously released the Land of the Dead expansion, and then they were working on the Vampire Counts expansion. So yeah,
and then they got to a point where they didn't care anymore.
Well, I don't think I wouldn't say I don't think anyone who works at Mythic or anyone who at Games Workshop would have would have done what happened, and I don't think you can blame those devs, even the ones that people do blame. I don't think really you can put the blame entirely on them, because at the end of the day they're taking orders from above, which is ironically the I'm sure you've heard the what's going on in the game developer space with the Unity engine and the new pricing model.
Yeah.
So the CEO of EA at the time was that guy who's the CEO of Unity. So that's what they had to put up with, I guess, at the time. So all the developers I've spoken to, and I'm sure when you've seen them come on the Return of Reckoning developer discussion thing we did, they are such passionate people, and they loved the game until they were couldn't work on it, and not by their own choice.
Okay. All right, let's continue on. Okay, the second part of this question is, furthermore, this has had a disproportionate effect depending on class and archetype, affecting tanks, especially two-handed tanks, much more heavily both in terms of survivability as well as damage output, leading to very few actually competitive setups. Now, to me, just before you guys begin to answer, to me, that this part of the question appears to be motivated from a solo perspective. Perhaps I'm wrong, but it does appear to be motivated from a solo perspective. But anyway, your comments, please. Or should I read the question again?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same point. We want to make every career have multiple playstyles and have more choice in gear, and we want them all to be viable, and it's what we want. We want everything to be viable, sort of solo, everything to be viable. That's the ideal goal. I don't know why anyone would say no, we don't want that to be viable, and we're trying to work out, having more choice in gear would allow us to do that. Whether it's a horizontal progression, so you could really tailor your setup to be really focused on group play, and not have the cookie cutter setup. So it's something that we want to do. And Techno, what do you think?
I mean, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I mean, kind of depending on how you want to play right now, there's only like probably one or two things you can build. So I think later down the line, having more options would be great.
Well, one of the beauties of this game, to me, always has been, again, the variety. Um, I do not believe that we have reached a point in the development of the game or the server where the choices are binary. And okay, again, sticking with the example of a sword master. Okay, yes, you can play sword and shield, you can play two-hand. That is a binary choice. But once you make that choice, the the options that you have to specialize are incredible, and there are a lot of different things you can do going down either path, and that's always been one of the strengths of the game. And I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to criticize whoever it was that asked this question. I don't mean it that way, but the survivability issue of that, if you make a spec and then you go out and get killed, okay, it's a game. That's going to happen, and I don't think you can let that color your choices that you're making or your enjoyment that you get out of the game, because the people who play the game and do everything they can to never die in the game aren't helping the game. Now, that's as far down that road as I'm going to go, but I just think that the variability of what players can do with their classes in this game is one of the very strong points. So if either of you, and always has been, so if either of you want to comment on that real quick, please feel free. Otherwise, we'll move on to the very last issue.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before, it's we want to expand the game in that way. So
Okay. Okay, here we go. And additionally, same guy asking, he says, some sets have odd stat distribution leading to them being way less desirable. You've addressed some of this already, but I'll read it anyhow. Some sets have odd stat distribution leading to them being way less desirable compared to the alternatives. Tank Warlord being the perfect example with toughness, but not enough of it to be meaningful. A 6% armor pin bonus, but not enough strength to capitalize on it. Little to no wounds are initiative, and disrupt that effectively amounts to 0 when facing BIS geared spellcasters once their strike throughs is taken into consideration. And I see I see a little validity in that. I do. I see some validity in that question. That, but please go ahead.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing. We obviously have the problem if there's sets out there already and we nerf them to kind of stick them in line. We run into the problem where everyone's getting nerfed and people don't like that, and you get not a lot of negative backlash. So the alternative is we increase other sets, which just increases the gear gap more. So it's kind of a hard arrow to play, hard line to play. And we we've created spreadsheets with all this information on how things are on the sort of stat curve that we're expecting for gear, and there are obviously a few that aren't on the line. And it's something that we're aware of, and it's something that we want to fix. So it's when we do item adjustments, that's something we're gonna to consider, get everything on track and expand the sets, and well, not expand the sets, but increase more variety of things. And as we add more content into the game, if we add new expansions, for example, we want the content to be we want people to want the gear, but we also don't want to just completely make everyone's gear worthless, because I think that's never a good feeling. You spent all this work on a game, and they release a new expansion pack, and you've essentially could have just deleted the character and started again, and you would have been in the same position.
WoW had that problem, especially kind of later on with some expansions.
Yeah, no, exactly. Exactly. You can be the complete top player, and then they can just completely destroy your progress in one little update.
Well, I haven't.
Very true.
Yeah, I was just going to say though. Again, I've been on the server since 2016, and I've been here, with the one notable exception of time that I was gone. But I've seen every change that has come down, everything that has been implemented, pretty much as it happened. And there's one one steady string that is sort of woven through all of that tapestry of the server that has stood out to me, and that is, as players, if we make our desires known through the appropriate channels, and then just relax and give you guys time, issues get addressed. And the one example I would give of that is for those of you who remember the core guard ability change. There were people who promoted that and asked for it. Then it was implemented, and then there were people who said, "Well, this sucks," and eventually it was rescinded. It's a process that has been going on ever since the server started. So what I'm doing here, Max, is trying to promote the ideal that you and all your associates do and always have had the best interest of the server at heart and the player base at large. You've had the desire to serve the player base at large, and we should just make our presence known, but at the same time sit back and give you guys the time it takes to do this stuff, and not get so bent out of shape about it. So, in that context, I want to give both of you one last opportunity. If there's something else you wish to address or anything you want to say, please feel free. Max, you're first.
Yeah, I mean, it's if we could spend every single day working on stuff for the game, I'm sure most of the people in the team would. And we want to get around to doing everything, and we want to please everyone. We're not doing anything. It's not like other games where we're trying to squeeze as much money out of people. It's definitely not that.
Right.
In fact, it feels like the opposite. But it's we would do this. We're doing this out of our own free time and things like that, and we never try and deliberately target some people. I know some people make it feel like that's sometimes, but it's definitely not. And yeah, just like making the game fun and let people play it.
Back now.
I mean, Max pretty much said it perfectly. I mean, the game over time, even on live, like it was still an amazing game, and here over time, I feel like it's just gotten better, and over time it will still be getting better and better, and we're glad to have that happen.
Well, I agree. Somebody again on my stream the other a few nights back, I've had people ask me what I thought of the current state, and I think the current state of the game is probably it's probably in the best position that it's been in, since inception. So, nothing is ever perfect, but nothing is ever going to be perfect. Not everybody's happy, but not everyone is ever going to be happy. It's just try and relax and take the game for what it is, and you can have a lot of fun here. So
Yeah, and I mean, people obviously said that in the last year or something, development slowed down, and it kind of really came from we had to kind of think, how can we make this sustainable? How can we want to deliver content for as long as we can, forever, sure. We put the effort into making working on tools to make things easier for people to work on. The new ability system makes it easier for us to do balance changes and work on new content for dungeons, if we do no dungeons, and new mechanics and things like that. So we're kind of trying to put in this investment of effort up front to be able to allow us to do this forever.
hey, do you have time for one more question?
Sure, go for it.
Okay. Now this one, I have since forgotten what the other point I wanted to make, but this one just came up some years ago, and I'm not going to mention any names, but some years ago, the attempt was made to introduce a new class into the game. I think it was a chaos class. I think it was called Beastmaster, if I remember right, but it was like a chaos guy running around, and he had a black panther-like cat with him, just like a white. It was basically a destruction version of the White Lion.
Sounds like
And
Dark Elf.
yeah, it was it was a dark elf class, and but it's basically just a chaos version of the White Lion. I remember, it being tested. I fought this thing. I fought it a number of times out in open RVR when it was being tested, and just out of curiosity, is that something that maybe someday down the line, somewhere over the rainbow, putting a brand new class into the game, is that ever considered, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it's always something that we want to do. Add new classes, new careers, new races and things. That's if obviously we'd love to do that all the time. The Beastmaster was, and I can't remember what the other one was called, but there was two of them. Was it was done in hacky way. Some of the code has been ripped out for those because of the new ability system, because it's a complete rework and things like that. And we are talking about how we could mechanically put them into the game, because putting them on the character selection screen comes with difficulties, and putting them in other places comes with difficulties. So it's something whether we are kind of considering what we can do, and I think we could, whether we focus more into giving the existing careers more defined archetypes, or adding new things in completely. And yeah, we had Secrets working on this for a while, and the amount of stuff he was doing in assembly code was crazy, and he would get one way and then crash everywhere else and things like that. So it's definitely something that's been worked on, and we'd obviously love to do, definitely. And everyone theorizes about what other careers we can have, and why can't they play Skaven and things like that. So it's always a fun topic.
Skaven is the one that gets brought up the most, for sure. And
yeah, but it's when you consider like Warhammer Fantasy roleplay with Skaven, you can't play Skaven. You can play 90% of the people are humans, and there's some dwarves around, and there's, I think, even elves are fairly rare. It's a lot less like D&D, where you'll be in a tavern in an Empire City or whatever, and then lizard men will walk in and sit down for a beer. That doesn't happen in Warhammer Fantasy. So it's a bit of a different dynamic. And when you think of what sort of the initial concepts of the game, when there was green skin, so there was like a kind of order, destruction, and chaos. And I think Beastmaster was considered, even halflings were considered, and there was another one. So there's remnants in the game that they expand. The way the realms were laid out was different, and things like that. And then obviously the first iteration of Warhammer Online, that was never released 20 something years ago, was even more restricted than that, and more of a role-playing game.
Well, I would not want to see halflings put into reckoning ever. I don't know, man.
I do
It's just-
have something to add to that. If that does get considered, if and when again, and it ever becomes feasible to put in a class, and I don't know if this could ever be done. You technically, I mean, like you have, like for orcs, you got your tank, your caster, healer, DPS. I don't see why you couldn't just take the character model of an orc and just reskin it, like your orcs and goblins, reskin them using not replace them, but just take a blank slate and put Skaven skins on those type models, because you have all four of the models in the game: tank, caster, melee, and ranged.
Yeah, so that's a good question. And it's kind of the reason I think, when there's an old developer video from Mythic, and I think quite close to when the game was shut down a few months before, if I remember, maybe it was when the guys at Mythic knew it was shutting down, and they added the live event that we then did leading up to the city, and it was what Mythic originally planned. They covered it in the video we did with them, and that was to do with completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, no, they were talking about when the Wrath of Heroes shut down, why didn't they just have loads of new classes in there? And the way that the models were never designed to be used as character models. So like the gear is baked onto their characters, and they don't have interchangeable gear, and the amount of design that's gone into each character to be able to have different hair and different this and different that and everything like that. And also all the gear needs to be then, be made for them and things like that. So it's a massive amount of work adding new ones of these. And
I
So
just thought.
yeah, so I mean that's why they did Skaven play, right? It was kind of like we can easily put Skaven in the game because people asked for it, and then but they didn't really. It was the kind of the quickest way to do what people wanted, and wasn't really, I think what people wanted was like an in-depth Skaven, like a full race as Skaven, and they people wanted 3 realms in Warhammer Online, and they did Wrath of Heroes, and it was like, well, we gave you 3 realms. People didn't like that, and then there's a lot of funky stuff like that, and yeah, it's just reskinning the existing ones. It's it could do, but it wouldn't be a full class that people would expect, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things you got now is there's a quest you can do that lets you to put on the disguise of a Skaven. One of the requests I've heard time and again is people would set, and a lot of people have said this, they would settle if they could just stay in Skaven form, even in combat, and it not kick them out. So would that be an option possibly to make that quest to where the item that they've already got that gives them the disguise could be where it wouldn't fall off when they get into combat? I mean, it's not giving them any bonuses, it's just a visual look. Did I lose you guys?
No, I'm just thinking. Techno, what do you think?
I mean, in regards to that, I'm not 100% certain. I think you'd probably know more about that than I would.
Repeat the question. Let me think about it.
In short, the question is, would it be possible that with the current quest that gives you this Skaven disguise that's in game, instead of it knocking the disguise off of you once you're in combat, remove that aspect to where you can stay in Skaven form? You don't gain any abilities, just the visual look of a Skaven.
I mean, I yes, but I don't know why you'd want
I only
to.
asked because I've had people ask that, so I thought I would bring it
Because
up.
so not every like if you were to stay in Skaven form in combat, like your if you had no abilities, then you couldn't do anything, and if you had the abilities you had as a,
But wouldn't that be tied to the animations?
they wouldn't necessarily have the animation sets for the abilities and things, and but for the existing abilities for those careers because they're all handcrafted for them.
Well, that's my point. For as an example, the currently I'm using as a mount the unicorn mount that was given out in one of the more recent live events. And when you click the mount button and you're using the standard horse, there's a particular animation. When you use the unicorn, your character just stands there until the 3 seconds are up, and then it pops on the horse. Okay, I mean, I don't care about that. That's fine. But the point I'm making is, if you were going to have a Skaven skin and then coat it to where the character would stay in the Skaven skin, uh, once you got hit by combat, would you or would you not have to redo the associated animations that go with whatever ability they happen to be using?
So the animation sets they won't be for Skaven, probably won't be as fleshed out as they are for
Right.
normal playable characters. Even some animals don't have jump animations because they were never intended to jump. I don't even think the
Right.
ram that you're on has yeah, there we go. It doesn't
Yeah,
have a jump
no.
animation. And while we could get an animator to create, there's probably 1,000 animations before just like playing normally, so it's a lot. Um,
Okay. Well, that's uh, The only reason to debate this at all is I think there are a lot of people who in the game who, for whatever reason, like the idea of running around as a big, huge rat. But
Pretty
so it's
much. That's why I
yeah,
asked is because
yeah.
it been brought up many times, and they're like, well, you at least some point ask, and I just haven't think about it to bring it up.
All right, guys,
Yes.
we've been on. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say. I mean, everyone remember. Do you remember the monster play that was in I think the 1.4 patch when they added the Thankful's incursion, which no one talks about, and the monster play with they had the new fort system in there with the relics, and then they had you could fly griffins over keeps and land, and then you could play as Skaven in them.
I remember the Thankless incursion, but not the other half.
Yeah. So that was in one patch, and they had Skaven play in there, and it was. I think people were glad to be able to play Skaven. I didn't think it was necessarily what people. It wasn't. I don't think it covered the potential of doing what they did.
Was part of that where the giant rat could pick you up and toss you up onto the keep wall? That was part of that whole bit, wasn't it?
I can't remember that specifically, but if it was, it would probably be that.
Yeah. The I thought that was fun. The orc catapults, though. The orc catapults. Whenever those are in the game, those things are amazing. Because
But
again, it's just something that's fun to do. But
Yeah. And what's quite interesting is I think the chat's talking about them being siege ladders, and obviously Dark Age of Camelot had ladders, and the game they were working on, which got cancelled between Warhammer and Dark Age, which was Imperator, they had ladders, but then Warhammer didn't have ladders. So what happened to ladders? What's more interesting is someone sent me something recently that Bethesda finally put proper ladders in a game, so of course players have dedicated themselves to designing any Starfield ships without any. So, ladders are hard to do apparently.
Bombling saying siege towers.
Yeah, I mean siege towers. We have a bunch of them modeled, and it's something that we would probably consider for RVR stuff. I think everyone wants siege towers. We obviously have to. Not every keep wall is the same height, which is a problem. So we need to, and how they work and things like that, and there's lots to consider with them. And if we want to do them properly, or we want them to sort of hack them in, there's obviously a consideration.
Yeah, something like that. You would have to put it to where, if with the walls being different heights, you'd have to put certain siege towers in to only work in certain spots where it would level up. Otherwise, it'd be all over the place.
okay,
Yeah.
sports fans. Oh well, I keep trying to. But anyway, we've been on for over 2 hours now, and usually that's about the time that the podcast lasts. So I want to say thanks again to everybody who watched and submitted questions, and of course a special thanks to Max and Techno for coming in and giving us some of their time to talk about this stuff. The only point I'd make about it is, I think in any endeavor where you're trying to accomplish a goal, communication is key. So communication is always beneficial. So in that regard, I think this has been a very beneficial affair. I'm glad you guys came in. And once again, this is the Toth podcast, and I have just been the moderator. And so what I'm going to do at the moment is just say thank you to everybody once again, and then I will turn it all back over to Toth so he can close it up. And you guys take care, and I hope to see you again soon.
Appreciate you handling things cares for me, and Max, you and Techno, and pass on thanks to the rest of the staff for the efforts you guys put in. I do appreciate y'all coming in, and I know the community appreciates y'all taking the time to answer questions and actually interact with them. I mean, you've been able to see them chatting with you in the stream chat. So, and I'm hoping that this will, open the door to future times of you guys coming on and, sharing your thoughts, participate in conversations, even if it's just general discussions. So, I as much as I encourage the community to share their thoughts, again, the door is open to you guys on the staff. You're always welcome. Always, come by, say hi, share your thoughts. And again, my thanks for you taking the time on your Saturday to come in here and answer these questions. And thank you to Bombling and all the rest that submitted questions for helping make this all happen.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. No worries.
All right, guys, take care. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Bye.
It's just me now. Chat. Me. And again, guys, I will work on getting a copy of this podcast up on my YouTube. So anyone that missed anything, it'll be up there. I'll put a list of the questions as well as credit to those who submitted them. So you'll be able to see who all asked them. And again, big thank you to Bombling, Hap, and many others for submitting the questions. And again, guys, the whole reason I do the podcast is to have an avenue for you guys to be able to share your thoughts and it go directly to the devs. So keep showing up. Again, it ain't about me. This is about this server. That's why I started it. So help me help the server grow is what I'm asking. And I just unmuted the dashboard alerts. I had my alerts and stuff muted because I didn't want anything playing while Max and them was talking, because I didn't want you guys to miss anything. So, see you on Battlefield, Canadian. So your thoughts, guys, on things. I'm curious to hear what some of you think. went over quite a bit there. Memes. There's no way I could sum it all up. There's too much. That okay on that front, and I've asked Destro players about this. That's on the Destro side to decide whether or not to defend a fort or to push forts. There's been ones where they've cornered order and have easily had a fort 1, and they just leave it and don't take the fort. When they could have, when they had more than enough numbers. So it's not always okay. Order outnumbers Destro. I've seen more than a fair share of times where it's just Destro doesn't bother or makes the arbitrary decision. They don't care. And then I get the same thing out of a lot of order players. They're like, what's the point? That goes back to how to address getting people to push the zones and actually fight again over the zones. Not a problem, Ronan. I try. It's like I said. I try, and I'm gonna keep doing it long as I can. But I do think though considering how long I've been going for today, I am gonna get you guys over to somebody else in the RoR community. So if you'll bear with me, I'm gonna wrap things up and raid out to someone else. That way I have time to work on some stuff. And I do appreciate y'all hanging with me today. I may be back live on my other channel over on Kick. I did get Max to I asked him, and he was nice and able to put it up. For those of you that do stream or looking to stream, if you decide to stream on Kick, you will show up on the RoR webpage. We do have a category over there on Kick. I saw to that. So it's another place to help try and make the RoR family grow. Any chance, we get to spread the word. But let me get a raid set up, guys. Let's see, who do we pay a visit to? Well, looks like some new people, which is a good thing. So let's pay a visit to a new person, shall we? Yep, we're gonna do that. Let's go make Halta's day, shall we? And I'll see you guys later.